Okay, so we just talked about this formula. Now we want to talk about this special technique called array entering a formula. Now it's good to review what an array is first, because it has that word in it. This technique says array, so maybe it's a good idea to talk about what an array is. So I'll look up array in Visual Basic like this, and I'll look at maybe this one. So basically an array is just like a long list. Okay, so here we have an array of names. Let's see if there's another example here. So now, if you remember, if you studied Visual Basic, here we're declaring an array of 3 elements. Remember, if you put a 2 there, it means the size of the array is actually 3. If you put a 5 there, the size of the array is 6. Put a 10 there, the size of the array is 11. So anyway, this means the size of the array is actually 3, because the first element is the 0th element, then the first element, then the second element, so that's 3 elements. And here we're assigning the value. The first element of the array is 100, the second element of the array is 10, and the third element of the array is 1. And then if we print out the array, we'd see that we have 100, 10, and 1. Here's a site that I used in my Visual Basic class. This is homeandlearn.co.uk, which is very good, and it has a very good Visual Basic class, course, or tutorial. Here we're defining something as an integer, and we give the value of that 5. Here we're defining something as okay, so this is a string, and we give the value of that one this string text. And here again, integer is 5. We're doing it all in one. Here we did it in 2 lines. Here we do the same thing in 1 line. And now we do an array. Here's how we define an array. An array of integers. So here's how we define an array of integers. We say dim my numbers, but instead of saying my number, we put something with brackets around it, and that tells us how many elements this array is going to have. This array is going to have 5 elements. Remember, it's 4 plus 1, because the first element is the 0th element. So we have an array called my numbers, and it's going to have it can take 5 different elements, values rather. It has 5 different elements, and so the first element is going to be 1, the second element is going to be 2, and so on. So that's how we would define this array. Any other examples here? Let's see. Let's go to the next one. No. Okay, here's another one. Now we're defining we're giving the first element the value 10, the second element the value 20, the third element the value 30, and so on. Okay, here's an example of an array that takes string values. So the first element is this, the second element is, third element has the value a, the fourth element has the value string, and the fifth element has the value array. Okay, so anyway, so these are all examples of arrays. Basically, as I said, an array is just a list of items. But you can have that would be a 1-dimensional array, but you can have a 2-dimensional array as well. And basically, that's just like a matrix, or maybe you might even say it's like a spreadsheet. Going back to this page, this is a 2-dimensional array. So you have a list here, and then another list here, and then another list here. Or you could say you have a list here, a list here, a list here, a list here. So you basically have 2 dimensions. So that gives you something like this. Okay, and we are actually going to use a 2-dimensional array in our examples. So it's good to recognize that you can have 2-dimensional arrays. Let's look at Microsoft's site about this. Since Microsoft wrote Visual Basic. Might be good to look at their site. So here we have here's a one-dimensional array. It has the elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess. Or maybe it's not those are not the values. Maybe that's just the names of the elements. So here, this is a two-dimensional array. So the first address of the first element is 0, 0, and we go 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, and here we go down 1, 0, 1, 2. So the 4 here means it's the 0, 4 means that it's the first row, or the 0th row, and the 4th column. Or actually, it's the 5th column, isn't it? The 5th column. Remember, each of these you have to say plus 1. So here, this means that it's the 3 means, I guess it's the 4th row, but the row comes first, and then the column. So first you tell what row it is, and then you tell what column. So 3 means it's the 3rd, but remember it's plus 1, so it's the 4th row, and 4 means it's the 4, but remember it's plus 1, so it's the 5th column. Okay, so that's a two-dimensional array. Now you can actually have a three-dimensional array also, and that you'd picture like this. This is 2 dimensions, and then you have another 2 dimensions, another, so you could have like a third dimension going this way. But we won't need that. And we don't need to know how to set up an array in Visual Basic, because we're not doing Visual Basic, we're doing Excel. Or we're doing Visual Basic for applications, but we don't need this, I don't think. So we don't really need to know how to set up a two-dimensional array. We just have to know that that we can use them. So that's basically what an array is. Now we're going to talk about array entering a formula. Remember, we're going back to this formula, and we talked about this formula, but some of it didn't make sense, because here we're talking about the month of a whole range. That doesn't make sense. You can't say the month of a whole range. You can say the month of one cell, not a whole range of cells. And here, remember, this was after the comma, so this is what's supposed to go in if this is true, right? So this is supposed to go in if it's true, but that doesn't make sense either, because you can't put in a whole range into a single cell if something is true. So this doesn't seem to make sense either. But that's where what we're going to do when we talk about array enter. Okay, so let's stop this one, and then we'll come back and talk about array entering.